perspective about members of Congress, finally coming together, but being frustrated with each other on the back end because it's not going to be perfect.
No, and I think you're making a really important point that there are going to be critics out there. I mean, gosh, how many critics? There were critics about TARP back in 08-09 where people said, why are we bailing out Wall Street, why not Main Street? And then on the other side, there are people who said we didn't do enough to save some of the larger corporations that could have sped up the speed of the recovery. Remember, a lot of people saying, gee, this recovery is taking a very long time. And then you had people on the left saying, well, if we put more money in, if we had done that sufficient spending, it could have been faster. And I think that's why, to pick up on Katie's point, it really doesn't matter to me if this bill is signed today or tomorrow. What matters is that we get it as right as we possibly can. Now, I have a different perspective. Katie's saying, hey, you know what, you don't want to, and a number of these senators, you don't want to discourage people from working. And I think that's absolutely on target. It's just that, to my mind, there's a bigger issue, which is American families. I just want to make sure that, given what's going on, that the American family of the working class, and I say that, I mean middle class, working class, poor people, that they're able to survive. When you think about it, the $1,200 payment to families, these people are going to be facing rent on April 1st. And you got to pay for kids, and you got all sorts of things to pay for. I don't know that that's enough to really sustain people, especially if we're going forward over several months. I just want to make sure that, given that $500 billion is going to these huge corporations, that there's accountability, transparency. I want that, but I want families protected.
I think that that's a lot of that's in the bill. Greg, I did want to get...
But to Greg's final point, these people aren't very smart. It's going to be an ugly mess, but it's our ugly mess. It's all we got, and it's going to juice the market big time. And if it hurts small workers, Trump's going to pay a big price.
Dana, I would like to just add something. Hey, Dana, excuse me. Sorry, I just want to apologize for swearing in the a few minutes ago. I lost my cool.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh, good. You know what?
What did you say?
It's just...
I took your name in vain, Jesse.
He'll tell you in the commercial break what he said. All right. We have a lot going on. Everyone's very stressed, but we are going to keep going here. We're still...
Welcome to have the pipeline opened up and delivery of more of those types of equipment items. Similarly, we want to see the process of developing drugs and vaccines expedited as much as possible. So those are the things that we need help with. And then, we continue to need the government at all levels to emphasize that the personal distancing, the social distancing, is extremely important at this point. This is our one chance to really blunt the curve and to prevent the transmission of this in a more widespread fashion throughout the country. Obviously, there's parts of the country that are really struggling right now. We want to make sure this doesn't happen countrywide. So it's really important for folks to be listening to their state and local public health, as well as their governmental officials. Stay home, do that social distancing, and let's all blunt this curve together.
There is a briefing for today as we see Dr. BIRX and Dr. FAUCI and the Vice President leave the room there. Dr. Deborah BIRX will be our guest tomorrow night on the story, so we look forward to speaking with her this evening. Lawmakers hope to have legislative text on this soon, so it could come to the floor for a vote. The president spoke moments ago about the $2 trillion deal, which would eventually grow to $6 trillion, roughly 30% of the GDP. Here's what the president said about this. He calls it the biggest ever bailout. That's what it is, actually, by numbers, the biggest ever bailout.
I encourage the House to pass this vital legislation and send the bill to my desk for signature without delay. I will sign it immediately. We will have a signing, and it'll be a great signing and a great day for the American worker and for American families.
Mnuchin has been there for the better part of 5 days. I saw him in the task force meeting today. He briefed us before he briefed the country on the package components. Also, our incoming Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, is up there along with our legislative director. Why is this important? It's important because we didn't just take the first deal that was there, we take the best deal for distressed industries and individuals who need economic relief. Extraordinary times like this require extraordinary measures. So let's just go through quickly some components of the bill. $100 billion directly for hospitals and the healthcare workers who are truly on the front lines of this crisis, and we all love and honor each and every one of them. That's a big chunk that they need. $350 billion plus for small businesses. If you have a business of less than 500 employees, there are loan guarantees, and if you keep payroll, you can't go out and fire your employees and take the money for something else. If you keep the payroll and you are keeping your employees there and employed, that money is there for you. $1,200 checks that'll start going to people directly in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's $3,400 for a family of 4. $500 billion lending for states, local areas, cities, and also other distressed industries that could apply. But all told, this is meant to direct relief to individuals and industries.
Right. And it's a $2 trillion bill, and you've outlined some of what's in it. Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott, some of the senators, are not happy with something that they see as a drafting error, or they're assuming it was a drafting error, which would mean that for some employees, they would get more from the benefits of this plan, this program, than they would from unemployment or from going back to work at their, at the full measure of the amount that they had been being paid before. What does the White House say about that? And is the White House, do you want to see that removed from this bill? They see it as a disincentive to get back to work.
Well, America is very incentivized to go back to work. We know that, and you're right that the numbers tomorrow will not be great. And the president said he wants America to get back to work in due time. He'll look at the data that this is a medical crisis before it's a financial crisis, and he'll follow the data and the facts. That said, there are some extensions in this bill, as I understand it, Martha, that if you are still unemployed, if you're self-employed, if you're an independent contractor and you're still unemployed after a certain period of time, some of those unemployment benefits will be extended. So we recognize for some people, 2 weeks
will come back stronger than it was before, and then we'll be back to square one.
Quick last thought, Mark?
Yeah, I don't think that's what he's advocating. What we want to do is get to the point where once we've surged our testing, and now after 8 weeks the FDA finally has allowed private businesses to get into the testing business, we're now surging our test capability. We want to have more of a South Korean style strategy where people can be tested and isolated if they have the virus, they do tracing, and then people who are not affected can go about their daily lives. And it may be that in some parts of the country we can do that, and in New York we're going to have a lockdown for a longer time. So we want to get to that kind of a sustainable strategy, and that's all the president is saying.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. I mean, we're all just guessing at time frame at this point, and I think the president wants to put out a hopeful message, and that perhaps over time you can start to open up certain areas a little bit, kind of test it out, make sure it's safe, and then have sort of a rolling reopening over time. Eric Garcetti in LA has said that he expects 2 months and possibly longer in terms of the lockdown, and they're obviously another real center of the tough activity on this virus so far. Austin, thank you very much. Mark, always good to have you as well. Thanks, guys.
Good to be with you.
Time. So as we speak tonight, New York is preparing to test plasma specimens from recovered
on weeds to the root without harming your grass.